Hey folks, Steve here with a special Axis Empires video for you today. This is a bit of an intermission video as I am in the process of finalizing my setup for the Divine Win 1944 campaign, which will include Schiffskrieg. Um, and boy, there's a lot more to consider with Schiffskrieg included, I think in a good way. Um, the action that we've seen in the Tora campaign really kind of, you're missing out on these, naval battles. There's a lack of fidelity with the delay box and how things go with you rolling those off. So this Schiffskrieg gives us the ability to have a lot more to consider, which is good. Um, and I've decided before we jump in to use Vassal, and this is a pretty good Vassal module. I might have some older versions of Vassal and the Vassal module itself up here, so forgive me if I'm a little out of date. Um, but what I have done in here, and I did it here rather than on my map because I do need to set up all my units for the campaign. I wanted to show the example of play that's there in, and unfortunately I'm not going to be able to zoom this in any better, so apologies there, guys. We have, I set up in the battle board part of the module here, the setup for the Battle of Midway. Now, if you want to take a look at the Schiffskrieg rulebook, it is available on the Decision Games website under their e-rules area, and then other rules you will find that the Schiffskrieg rules is available. And on page, let's see, I guess this is, I'm looking at it on another screen. Pages 12 through like 13 show an example of the Battle of Midway, kind of playing out the historical narrative, more or less, and the way things operated. And so I thought I'd like to show kind of some alternative ways that battle could have gone in the system. If you want to read the regular way that this could have gone, just read that example of play on pages 12 and 13. The way it works was somebody's playing a CV strike towards Midway, and we can see Midway up here, Pacific Ocean, on this area right here, Midway, 1942 time frame, May-June 1942. The Axis player wants to put a CV strike marker over Midway, and doing so will prevent the Allied faction from using Midway as an air base or naval base, which will open the door for a beachhead landing against that strategic hex. So this is the Axis on an offensive maneuver here, and they comprise a task force, and they roll a 2 with an automatic +6, and they're going to assign 8 ships to the task force. They're also including their I-boats, which are treated special. Yeah, so you can see, and then they were sending these guys from truck. So 4 carriers and 4 cruiser ships, obviously with smaller vessels subsumed into these named counters. But that's what we have, and then opposing them is the Western faction, which contests their placement with a CV fleet of their own. They get a slightly better intelligence die roll, which gives them 10 units to use, but they don't have as many to commit beyond the 3 carriers, which are really the 3 carriers that the Americans have available at this point in the war for this scenario, and a good handful of cruisers. And then they're also allotting the air units here that are based in Honolulu, and the way that this works is because Midway is 9, and you can almost, based on your screen resolution and what quality you're viewing this video at, there's a 9 hex in the Air Force, the tangible Air Force unit that's included in the task force. So because the target area is 9 hexes away from the air base at Midway, we can use it. That's all logic written out in the example of play. So if you count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hexes to Midway, that's within. So we can basically be sending land-based air to support the defense of Midway, and that's what we're doing there. And there is some rules here about land-based air having certain advantages against the air factors from a aircraft carrier, because a land-based air is really a lot more planes. Like there's just it is really representing a lot more stuff. And so when a carrier is trying to fend off a land-based air, there are some consequential things there, which the example of play does reveal as you walk through. And I'm still understanding these rules as I go, so there's certainly some things I'm going to need to review before we play the Divine Wind campaign. Anyway, the key thing that they also have happening, and this is related to the cards, is they are assuming, and let's see if I can, oh, nope, that's going to look worse. This is the best resolution, that a naval intelligence coup card is being played. Now, this is a Fortune of War card, which we've not used in my play series yet. They're optional, and then if you're playing with Schiffskrieg, you add additional cards to the what are they? FOW cards. I can't remember. Fortunes of War. Fortunes of War cards. If you're playing with Schiffskrieg and you want additional Fortunes of War cards, you get extra cards, and then both sides draw one additional card to make sure that you get some representing the Schiffskrieg stuff. While this scenario assumes that that you are playing with the Schiffskrieg cards, and the Allies were sitting on this naval intelligence coup card, which they would play. And in the narrative of the example of play, you get they have the Allies get the major effect, which is you get a +1 DRM for combat die rolls. What's interesting is the example of play, and I wonder if this is just a... Yeah. You get a +1 DRM for both rounds of combat, which is really important. That's really strong. That's incredibly strong, to be honest. You also get an additional bonus for determining whether you want a day or night action. So this is really a powerful card if you can get it, right? So they're saying the Allies played this card, they rolled a 2, which means they get the major effect. And then in the narrative of the example of play, not to repeat all of that, the Allies get their pick of day versus night. They kind of win the die roll on that. They choose day, which means that you're primarily going to be having air combat, unless, like, these cruisers are there almost just superfluously in a day action. But you still need to escort, and there's a task force requirement for you to escort carriers like this. So either way, like these are good task forces generally. But again, like in terms of air, we would have the air factors 4, 4, 4, and 2. So altogether 14 air factors for the Allies, and then 4, 3, 4, 3. So 14 air factors for the Japanese, and then you get the torpedo boat, or the sub I-boat, which gives you some additional factors for combat. And you would think, like, okay, well, in a straight-up day battle brawl, the Japanese have more air factors to throw, but you got to keep in mind a couple of things. One, if the Japanese were to have heavy damage applied to their carriers, well, it's going to be a lot harder to come back from this battle, period, honestly. And if they're able to destroy the American carriers, let's say we were lucky and wiped out all three as the Japanese, well, there's going to be more carriers coming, so we'd get a reprieve where we control the board fairly well. So the example of play mentions like, well, the Axis would want a night action, hoping to protect their carriers. Why would that be good for them? Well, in a surface ship fight, which is these four ships versus these ships, I don't even know that I would say the Japanese are necessarily winning that matchup. It's so razor thin that it's almost, a non-issue. And then what kind of makes this play into the Japanese's hands would be these I-boats, by special exception, can actually get their 2 die roll shots at a carrier. And so the ideal situation for a night action here would be, again, like these cruisers have a gun duel shooting at each other, but these I-boats get in, and maybe we get lucky and we sink a carrier. And if that happens, and then we go to a second round, let's say, ideally the Japanese would then be in a much better position to be able to take a fight against 4 carriers to 2 carriers, and still have to deal a little bit with this land-based air. But that math is at least a little bit better for the Japanese. But what's really, I think about the way the system works. I don't even know that I would, like, let's just take one of these carriers away for a hot second. I don't know that I would even want this, because you're still going to have, let's say 8, 10 air factors. You still probably put 2, 2, 2, and 2, and then maybe up to a third one on these. Well, 3 attacks with or without the Fortune of War card, right? There's still a decent chance that you're going to do some damage or sink these carriers. And I have to wonder, like, would the Japanese even want to fight this battle ever? And let's just take one of these aircraft carriers away. Like, is a 2-to-1 advantage? It's a firepower based system here. So long as the Allies are putting planes in the air, our aircraft carriers are in danger. And there doesn't seem to be in this system anti-air, and there doesn't seem to be. I'll say this. I think you look at this is a simpler naval air combat system, but it feels like it does feel like your aircraft carriers are so fragile, and they are fragile. But I guess there's a screening thing that I'm used to seeing, and say, like, I don't know, World in Flames. Yeah, that's going to be the game I compare. Where, like, okay, I can put my carriers into play with some expectation that they're in danger, but not like all my, it's not. I don't know. I don't know how to look at it, guys. Maybe this system works, but I still feel like it's missing an anti-aircraft component that would allow us to try to fend some of these guys, some of the fighters off before they get close to the carriers and make their attack. But if I try to remind myself my histories, and I look at the Pacific War books by Ian Toll or John Costello or others, like, maybe it is just this way, right? We're just like, your aircraft carriers are going to be in deep danger no matter what happens, and you're really just hoping for bad die rolls on your opponent. If you follow the example of play, you eventually see, like, yes, because of the naval intelligence, and we all understand why that is, right? Like, historically, the Allies kind of baited a trap for the Japanese and had really great intelligence and wrecked these guys. And in game terms, that's kind of the best way to represent that with these Fortunes of War cards and this bonus. Again, the +1 is just so strong on the die rolls. Um, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. Um, and that's on every die. So the more you spread out your air factor air factors to do combat, I mean the example of play puts 3 dice on Akagi, 3 dice, 3 dice, and then it 3 dice. So 3 dice on each carrier, and then it spreads out some additional die rolls against the cruisers. That totally makes sense, right? If you're getting a +1 on every die, and you're increasing the chance that any single die now has a much greater capability, now a 1 in 3 chance of doing a damage result on a target, it would make sense to spread out your factors. Now, if you weren't using the card, then you'd have to rethink that. You'd say, well, I'm only going to do damage on a 6, then it probably pays to concentrate on the actual carriers, and that's kind of a different thing. So what's the point of this video? Well, let's just say I kind of want to do a reenactment, but change it a little bit, right? And let's try to figure out like what would it take to win the Battle of Midway as the Japanese in any meaningful way to call it a victory, right? How would this ever even occur? So let's do a couple of things. Let's take the naval intelligence coup off the board. Let's not have the card involved. I'm not going to give the card to the Japanese because I think that's maybe too much and not anywhere near historical. So let's just say there's a miscommunication in the American intelligence operation, and they get some information wrong, and they don't get their naval intelligence coup. So that's off the table. Now let's say that the Japanese get lucky, and in the die roll, here I'll just have to, I'm going to make stuff up until we get it. Oh, we got a 2, whatever, roll dice. The Japanese win, and they make it a night battle. Let's say that's what, if we think like, oh, this is definitely the way that we would want this to go, is we want a night battle. Again, I'm not sure is that really what we want to have happen? I'm not sure. But let's say that it is. Night battle. We don't expose our carriers. They're dangerous to be left out like this. We're going to do a night battle. So now it's a night battle. Now what? Well, in a night battle, and I'm revalidating in the Schiffskrieg rulebook, each ship rolls a number of dice equal to its gunnery factors. An X-boat rolls a number of dice equal to its torpedo factors. Airstrike factors are ignored. So, for all the purposes here in a night action, these are ignored. These are ignored. So now it's really these guys and these guys. I'm trying to, if I move them, they get the nice little moved marker, so we can focus on these guys for a second. So those are the primary ships that are really involved in the combat. And then naming targets in a night action. Each surface ship and X-boat is assigned to one target ship and executes its whole attack against that target. You can't split the gunnery or torpedo factors between targets. Different attacking ships may combine against the same target. Not all ships and land-based air in the enemy task force may be freely attacked in a night action, so all surface ships in the enemy task force may be attacked, so that's all good. A carrier in the enemy task force may be attacked by torpedo factors, so we have the possibility that this I-boat attacks one of these guys, and they're all equally good, so take your pick of who you want to try to take out. A carrier in the enemy task force may be attacked by gunnery factors, but any combat result achieved against it is ignored unless all surface ships in that enemy task force are sunk, damaged, or disabled. So it's not going to be relevant here because we just simply don't have enough units to do it, but we could attack the air. So this is a little bit of screening that's in the game rules. We could get gunnery shots on the carriers, but only if we said, like, we're going to have this guy attack here, and the rest of these guys were all destroyed in the other combats, then we would apply those hits or die rolls against the Enterprise. So it's sort of this weird thing, like you could potentially assign gunnery factors to a carrier like this, but if you didn't succeed and hit and destroy everything else, those were wasted die rolls. So you kind of have to watch what you're capable of achieving. That basically requires you having chipped away at the escort enough that you can get at these guys in that night turn. And then a land-based air unit cannot be attacked in a night action. So we really can't do anything about this land-based air at the moment. So that's all we can do. So let's say that is truly what it is. Well, all right. So let's just get a nice clear log in our chat box up here. So let's start with start with the torpedo factors, and just to make this easy, I'm going to put this right here. So we're going to have our torpedo factors focus on the Enterprise, and then we're going to have the oh boy, I can't even read the name properly on my own screen. We're going to have this cruiser attack, this cruiser attack, this cruiser attack, this cruiser, and this cruiser attack that cruiser. Just for the ease of action here. And keep in mind that, yes, the Americans will get to fire back with their factors regardless of the results here. So, first off, we'll have the I-boat attack the Enterprise. So what do we do? Well, for each factor, we're going to roll a die. Yeah, I'm just double checking a couple of things. Okay, all right, we're good. So rolling 2 dice. Well, what do we want? Well, we want a 5 or a 6. Ideally, a 6. So 2 dice. Boom, boom. All right, these are misses. And then we're going to end up having this guy go to the delay box. So I'll just stick that over here for now because we may replay this in a second. So attempt on the carrier's total missed opportunity. Then here to here, right? 2 die rolls. Boom, boom. Okay. So a 5 is a disabled result. So we're going to end up sticking him right there. These guys on the Minneapolis. Boom, boom, miss. Here. Boom, boom, miss. Here to here. Boom, boom, miss. Catastrophically bad. We disabled 1 unit and everything else is a whiff. So now this ship, 7. What I would do is we're going to have 2 factors here, 2 factors here, 2 factors here, 1 factor here. So on this first Japanese ship, boom, boom, he's sunk. Then here, boom, boom, he's disabled. Here, boom, boom, that's a miss, and then the final ship is a miss. So, we say that's the end of the combat round, well, let's see what the situation is. The Japanese sunk a ship. They've got a disabled ship. So at the end of the combat round, these go to the Naval Warfare Delay Box. So they're aside. Then it's a question, right? Do you go again? Right now, I think the Japanese wouldn't want to. They'd probably say, let's get out of here, man. Let's just drop out. And we don't get to attack Midway. We are sufficiently blocked, but at least we didn't lose a whole lot of stuff, right? Um, that's not a great result in my mind. I don't think like that just wasn't very good. So let's try it again, right? What is it going to take? What's a good result you can even hope to achieve? Again, let's assume it's a night battle. We're doing 2 on the Enterprise. Boom, 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 boom. 2 on the Enterprise. Boom, boom. Miss again. This guy's just not hitting anything. All right, so this guy would be sunk. That's a hit, and this guy would be sunk. And then here, he'd be disabled. And then here, he would be sunk. And then if we apply, again, our 7 factors against the Japanese ships, we go miss, miss, he's disabled, and then finally a miss. Now, this looks much better. We didn't get any hits on the aircraft carrier, but that's not bad at all. So we look at this situation and we go, okay, that's the end of the first round, right? These guys go away. They just lost a bunch of cruisers. But the Americans say, you know what, I can't afford to let the Japanese attack Midway. We can't lose Midway. That would be very bad. We got to stay. And Japan is saying, I'm sticking around. I'm going to keep trying, right? Now, what happens when you go to do a second round? Well, after the round is over, you'd say who's going to retire. If we say that no one's retiring, then you're going to do another day or night check. Again, the Americans would be advantaged here, even without the Fortunes of War card, because if somebody wants a day result, they can get a day result. I think the Japanese would want to continue to have a night result, and so, I don't know, let's just roll the dice. Oh, the Japanese got a 6, the Americans got a 4, 3 plus 1 is 4. Japanese get another night action, right? So now, unfortunately, our number of ships is still a problem, but we would still do a matchup like this. We really don't have any choice to target the American carriers, so we would do basically boom, boom. So this guy's disabled, boom, boom. This guy is sunk, and then boom, boom. This guy is disabled, and basically each ship will get 1 shot. We'll just spread them out for this example, and this guy gets disabled. So here's the thing. At the end of this combat, right, this is much better, right? The Japanese basically just have 2 disabled ships that go. The Americans have a couple of disabled ships, but they lose 4 cruisers. Now, there's still stuff left, but it didn't matter. These night combats had the combat, and if 2 combat rounds have been concluded, then there will never be more than 2 combat rounds, and we're going to determine if a faction has won the battle and whether that results in the success or repulsion of a support unit. Okay, well, who won? Did anybody win? All right. After that sequence is completed, there are 3 possible outcomes: stalemate, success, repulsion. Success occurs if either of the following conditions is met. The enemy task force retires after the first combat round without inflicting a disabled or sunk result. Okay, well, that didn't happen. This is called a limited victory, so Oh well. We didn't get that because the Americans didn't retire after the first combat round. Every ship in the enemy task force is sunk or disabled or whatever. That's a major victory. Well, that didn't happen. And so then a stalemate occurs. Okay, what happens with a stalemate? Um, and actually, I think the I boats we'd get to fire again. So let's get another shot off at the carriers really quick. And oh yeah, we did sink the Enterprise. That's fantastic. That's great. That's actually great. Great news. Okay, but it's still a stalemate. So what do we get? We get place the X boats and damaged ships in the naval warfare delay box. Okay, so you would go to the delay box up here for the moment. Rest of these disabled guys also going there. That's fine. We would place undamaged ships in the used box of the naval zone containing the battle location. I'm not sure which one that would default to, given that Midway is a multi-zone port, so I might have to look at that. Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work. But the rest of these guys would go that way, and then we would place our land-based air in the used asset box. Okay, and that's an at-large used asset box. And then place both factions' support units in the appropriate delay box per 2.2.3.3. So basically both going to the naval warfare delay box. So under the absolute best circumstances here, right, we would find in a night battle the very best, right? Like we're firing as much as we can fire on these guys. We're limited by the fact that the 4 Japanese ships can only fire at 4 cruisers at a time. Really limits their ability to win this battle. So if you're not playing with Fortunes of War, you're not playing with those cards, and it's just based on the intelligence die rolls and the size of the task forces. The Japanese can at best get a stalemate here, I think, based on night actions, right? And that's night actions only. So how would they get a true victory and get to invade Midway? Well, we're going to have to set back our clocks again and figure out how to do that. Well, the way to do that, right, to cause a victory, is to wipe out everybody. And I find that, again, in this setup, highly unlikely to get a full major victory where you destroy everything. There's just not enough. There's just not enough ships, honestly, to get that far. For better or for worse, the Japanese just don't have enough firepower to push out there across a single round of combat or any rounds of combat to destroy everything in a night action. What we could probably get as the Japanese is a limited victory, wherein the first combat round the enemy task force requires without inflicting a disabled or sunk result against us. That's highly unlikely when you figure you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 units firing. Somebody's going to hit something. If you add up all the dice, that's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 dice. Even accounting for 1/6 of those are going to hit, right? You're going to get at least one, right? Now, whether or not it's an air factor, maybe, and where you do the damage, but, again, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I don't see that working. You're likely to get 3 to 4 hits on average across the Japanese, like the Americans attacking the Japanese. So you'd have to get without inflicting any result, without inflicting a disabled or sunk result. And a disabled is actually, yeah, to do mathematically, it just doesn't work. You're going to get some kind of disabled or sunk result against the Japanese. I just don't see it any other way. So I think this calls into question, like, I don't think you can, Midway as it was arranged here, with or without the Fog of War card, just doesn't allow us much more capability to operate. I mean, there's just not enough stuff. Now, if you went to, I don't know, let's say it was a day action, and let's go ahead and give the card back to the Japanese, and they did their level best to concentrate firepower on their airstrike factors on the American carriers. Would that get them anything better? Well, if I go with the example of play and say, hey, 5 dice against the Enterprise with a +1, and boy, five feels like a lot, but yeah, let's do it. 1, 2, oh, okay. Well, Enterprise is sunk, but that was 3 6s in a row, so I don't know how much more I can do for that. 5 dice against the Hornet. 1, oh, okay. Waste of dice. And wow, that's funny. So that's 1 hit. Right, only 1 hit. That does 4, and that sinks. Well, now we're talking, guys. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. You sink all 3 American aircraft carriers. We didn't even need the +1. What a waste. We probably should have done something else there. But now, if we have the counterattack, right? If we want to focus on the Japanese aircraft carriers, we would probably say, okay, we've got 12, 14. We're going to do 4 dice, 4 dice, 3 dice, 3 dice. So Kagi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 hits. Akagi is sunk. Hiryu, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow, something's up with my dice roller. Well, the Hiryu is safe. Kaga gets 3 dice. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and the Kaga is damaged and disabled. And then again, 3 dice here. 1, 2, 3, and it's disabled. Now, would you trade this? I think we said the Kaga was damaged. Would you accept this result? It's still not a major victory, still not even a limited victory. So, there's not really many ways that Midway is going to get in to this combat, but it's not bad, right? I mean, you just sunk all the carriers the Americans have on the board. You lost one. You're gonna have a delay on some. You're not gonna get into Midway. That's just not gonna happen. But you did okay, and you've got a carrier left that will allow you to do a CV strike in a future support marker play. So, do you take this? And I would also say, if I was in this position here, I probably, I don't know, if we had another air, let's say we have another air round here, right? Because we don't want to let well, you try to do some damage here. You've got air against the Hiryu, and you disable the Hiryu, and we'd get 1 die against the land-based air, and we don't hit anything. it's really hard to figure out like how could Midway go any better for the Japanese in this hypothetical, reconstruction here, where the Japanese don't have these same intelligence problem that crops up. So what else could be done? Well, let's say and now I've got to dig deep. Um, Problem is this: I pulled this out of the counter tray, so this is going to be trickier to get back to what I want. So let's make the die rolls inversed, right? The intelligence die rolls are inversed. So instead of 10 ships, so we'll take away the New Orleans and the Portland. Say they only get 8 ships, and by comparison, the Japanese are going to get 10 ships. We get to add 2 more. We have, let's see, we're 4 and 4, and we can't really, like, there's not, I guess maybe there's like one other carrier we could have thrown in here. I think the Japanese did have some light carriers. So let's give them the Chiyoda. And I'm just, this might not be what the historical order of battle could have been, but I'm just, for demonstration's sake, and we've got room for a battleship, so I'm going to throw a battleship in here. We'll just do the... It's hard to pick one like this. We're not gonna do the Yamato. We're gonna just do the Hyuga. So this is a pretty good setup, maybe. What I'd probably do, to be honest, actually, is I'm gonna take this guy off. I'd probably want to put another battleship in here. So let's put the Issei up. So we hit a maximum number of heavy ships. We still have more regular ships than we have aircraft carriers, and we still throw our I-boat in. So this is the real thing that would have changed it, right? Like, let's change the intelligence. Let's say the Japanese came up with a new code, and the Americans don't know how to don't know how to read the code, can't see what's going on. They don't have the Fortunes of War card, the intelligence die roll. The Japanese have done much better. They rolled a 4, and the Americans rolled a 2. So inversing this a little bit, and they get a little bit closer to the ideal, decisive battle on their side. Now, how do things shape up? Well, the big difference here, the key difference maker, is we now have 2 additional ships for the Japanese and 2 fewer ships for the Americans. And when you look at the numbers here, you can see we have a decent chance of inflicting results on the American carriers, even in a night battle. So let's give them the night battle here, right? Night battle, we're going to do that. We're going to do 2 shots on our torpedo boat on the Yorktown. Miss. That's too bad. We're going to have the battleship Issei here, 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 and what we're going to hope for is we destroy all these guys and get a shot off on the Hornet. So we'll start with the battleship on this cruiser. 4 dice. And again, we're going to say no Fortune of War card for the Japanese. That's a disable at least. 4 here. 1 hit. Sinks. Only got 2 here. Not going to be enough. So we're not going to hurt the Hornet, unfortunately. And then miss. Miss. All these were misses, so we go back. And if we look at, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you say, well, maybe we're going to try to shoot these battleships. So 2 dice, 2 dice, 2 dice, 2 dice, 1 dice. So Issei is damaged. That's funny. Disabled. And wow, that's funny. Sunk. This is kind of bad luck. Really. I'm sorry. That was only supposed to be 1 die, so that's it. And then okay, do you re-rack them and go again? Well, I think we would go ahead and everyone stays, and on the second roll, if the Japanese need it to be a night action. There's just no other way for this to go. It has to be a night action. Still missing on our torpedo boats, and then 2, 2, 2, and at best we just destroy the escorts. So that just didn't. Even then, we didn't get what we needed. Our battleships just couldn't quite get the job done for us, which is a bit of a shame. So this is just one of those things, like I think if you were looking at the situation, you might be saying, well, then maybe the lesson learned here is, at least in the Axis Empire system, do the Japanese, is there any point in having, sorry, I meant to keep these guys off. Is there any point in having the Japanese, do this attack, right? The very best thing that could happen here is on round 1. Let's just take the dice out of it for a hot second. The very best that you could do, you get a night action, and you match up your cruisers with these guys, like so. Then you put your battleship on one of the carriers and your torpedo boats. And so you get super lucky, and you sink every single one of these guys. Unlikely, but let's say that's what happens. You're almost certainly going to take some damage back. Like, I don't know how we would get a major victory out of this. We probably wouldn't. So maybe some of these guys get frazzled up. But because we destroyed all the other surface ships, we get 4 shots off on this carrier, right? You figure 4 shots, we got to hit something. Boom, there it is. Boom, there it is. You sink the Hornet. Maybe you get lucky with the torpedoes. I don't, but roll the die enough times, and maybe you get something, and maybe you damage or you sink the Enterprise all in 1 round. And then I think if you were to do that in 1 round, I think the Yorktown and the planes get the heck out of Dodge, right? Because you're about to lose America's last carrier in 1942. That feels crazy, doesn't it? That it would have to go that well in this combat. It would have to go that well. The alternative, to be clear, We swapped the die rolls. So this is where I think the intelligence die roll almost is king, because it's going to govern your ability to bring units to bear and conduct this combat. And again, I think that the Japanese are probably wanting night actions, but that's historically accurate, right? I think they tended to like these night battles, right? Like I think this is the default, right? Try to do this where I guess this is the one last this is a long video, guys. This is a long intermission, but worth exploring, right? This example. Let's set out the bans, right? No Fortune of War card used by either side. The Americans roll a 1. So effectively they get seven ships and they throw in their planes. Right, so instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they only get 7. So do you take 3 of these guys straight out? So this is the 7 that they send. Best they can operate with right now. Let's say the Japanese roll a 6. So 6 plus 6, that's a 12. So now we got a couple of battleships. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We get a couple more. I think what I would be looking at is a couple more cruisers. So let's make sure I don't duplicate counters for a second. Let's get this guy in there. And this guy in here for fun. Let's just say that they're available for us. Well, now things are looking real rough, and they're already committed. Once you commit and you roll your intelligence star, like, this is it. This is the best you got. And we've got a pretty robust fleet engaged here. So again, you kind of want, if you let it be an air battle, it's really dicey for both sides. Really dicey. I mean, a total who knows, and I don't think that benefits the Americans very well. So let's say you do that. I mean, gosh, if it were 7, I don't even know that I would. I mean, I might try to cut my losses and only deploy 1 carrier and fill in the blank with some crappy, cruisers, because I don't like the look of this, right? With the intelligence die rolls. And what's funny is the Japanese player picks their thing first. So if they say, "Well, I'm gonna try to contest it, but I only roll a 1 and I can only send my 7 ships, but I have to send something, and it because I tried to block with a CV fleet, I've got to throw in one carrier." And it's this one-sided like this, right? You figure, okay, well, in the air battle, right? Let's say it's a day battle. I think this American fleet gets trashed, right? You figure you can dump. You put 7 points. You put 9 points on the Yorktown. 9 dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That this guy's doomed. He's gonna get crushed, right? Now, however many dice you want to roll, Yorktown's going to be done. And then you still have 7 air factors that you throw out across all these guys. So everyone's getting a die there. And then you've got tons of well, I guess that would be it, because it's an air battle. So you have 7. You'd have at least 1 shot on each one of these guys. You'd probably try to focus and just nibble away at them, and then you're sending them home, right? Or maybe you even go for their air power at that point. So You'd get 2 dice, and that's a hit, and okay, you've damaged this Air Force, and that's pretty good. And so when you look at it that way, you change the decision making, right? How many units are we getting in? Well, if it's only 7, you don't want to put these other carriers at risk if you know, right? You as the Americans would already know what the Japanese are sending, so like you want to roll high intelligence, but you fail to. You got a crap roll. You got to give something to the wolves. Well, what do? The other risky thing would be go, no, I'm gonna take the chance. I'm gonna put in both. I'm gonna send in 3 carriers. I'm gonna do the very level best I can and hope I get the day combat right, and then they're hoping their 14 air factors still beats out the 16 Japanese, and that they just get better die rolls. But without the Fortunes of War card, I mean that's truly chaotic. If it's a night battle, then you're in deep, deep, deep trouble, because you would basically say like, I guarantee I want to get rid of this guy. Guarantee I want to get this guy in the night battle. I want to get this guy shut down. I want to get him taken care of. I'm going to send 2. I'm going to send 2. And then that still gives me shots on all the carriers. So from here to here, right? Well, those are all misses. That's unfortunate. And so, this guy goes away. You'd have some more. This guy goes away. Some more. This guy goes away. But because we missed with our battleship, the only chance we get on the aircraft carrier is that, and we sink the Hornet. I mean, you look at all these different permutations, right? And it's the intelligence die roll that's really going to make it more. It's going to shift what are the outcomes that are going to come from this battle. The Fortune of War card certainly has an effect, but I think the intelligence die rolls make a huge difference. And even if you said, well, the Western die roll is still a 4, so you get a 10. And if I try to set this out again, the originating task force, understanding that their task force is going to be a response to the Japanese. If the Japanese had just rolled a 6 rather than a 2, right? Let's say they just got a better die roll. The numbers make it really significant. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 with the I boat. If you look at this, the day battle still pretty dicey, still pretty tricky. I don't think there's any way you can cut that. But if the Japanese manage to get that night battle, I'm not going to recreate everything again, but you look at the matchup, and there's enough bleed over that you can take some shots at those aircraft carriers. Is it going to be enough to not get a stalemate? Probably not, but it's your chance to do some pretty significant damage to the American task force. And maybe, right, if you get a guaranteed shot with the torpedo boats, you just sunk the Hornet right there. Maybe you don't get everything else, but if you can at least do that much damage, it's worthwhile. And then even if you stalemate, you may not get Midway, but you just put a big dent in them. If you get the outer bands, the best luck possible, the Japanese get a good die roll, and the Americans get a crap die roll, and don't think it's unlikely. because I've played World in Flames enough to know that the back to back, your opponent rolls a 1, which is excellent in that game's naval air system, and you roll a 10, and I've had back to back times that have happened to me where I'm the loser. It's catastrophically bad. Here, the back to back, you getting a 1, or your opponent getting a 1, you getting a 6, and this one's 6. High roll is better in this game. Well, you figure again, 7 American ships versus 12 Japanese ships. That maybe doesn't quite give us. It would be very hard to imagine a situation where you don't get a stalemate. Maybe you don't get into Midway, but you've probably trashed American fleet. So one of these things, that's zooming in at the operational tactical level. Looking at it strategically, right? You're going to go for Midway. Taking Midway is too important for the American player not to try to defend it. And you are forcing that combat, and again, you put everything in context, even the historical context. You're going for Midway, you're forcing this battle. If the Japanese had just rolled better on their intelligence die roll, right? Take away the Fortune of War card in a game context for a second. The Japanese had a pretty good chance of inflicting a pretty nasty blow to the American Navy, and it's certainly within the realm of possibility. Not totally out the door that they could have done better here. Again, that would totally shift in a game where the Japanese have the Fortune of War card that allows them to get the +1 that early in the war. So as this video reaches an hour, and I'm just sitting here rolling dice and talking to you about it, which is a bit of a different format, but at least more direct in the content that I'm sharing here. What am I learning from walking through this? Well, one, I'm trying to do this to make sure I understand the whys with Schiffskrieg. In the base game, when you just throw out a support marker, it's about blocking, and then you get more markers, and you do the other thing, this, that, and the other. And maybe you're using a marker because your opponent just has to protect Midway, and then you follow that up with another marker and another task force, or whatever it is that you're going to do. You're going to do all those things. And the Japanese maybe leave one carrier behind, because if they have another carrier marker, they're going to send one more at Midway, and they're going to have, a carrier fleet, or one carrier unit, and the Americans might not have any, and that's what they're going to need to take Midway. But in a normal game, it's just support marker versus support marker. Whoever's got the most support marker is going to win, and Midway is going to get taken. With Schiffskrieg, you look at it and go, well, I'm probably not gonna get my CV strike in a Midway with one support marker play, just as I would in the normal game, right? It's usually not enough unless the opponent truly can't or doesn't want to contest that placement. Here, the Japanese can still get something out of it by getting the combat that they want. And likewise, the Americans say, oh, I'm so glad he's coming at me at Midway with his best aircraft carriers, because I've got my intelligence card that's going to hopefully give him a wallop. And, historically, that's what happened. So I'll say, just to wrap up this video, because, gosh, it's way too long. I'm so sorry, folks. Here's where I'm at. I think the combat system does have to integrate with the strategic. The impacts and the reasons what you put in your task force to deploy in the combat is going to matter. It's going to matter based on your intelligence die rolls. And it's going to matter on where your ships are based. And much like World in Flames, the search role, which is kind of how I look at it, right? That's effectively what it is in World in Flames. Is your search role is the functional equivalent of the intelligence role here. It all works quite a bit differently, obviously, like totally different systems, not even really comparable, but that heightened sense of urgency in the die roll is still there, where You don't want the bands. You don't want to get, the outliers of 1 on a 6. You get a 1, your opponent gets a 6, or vice versa. And all these other things kind of creep into the system. It seems like is gonna matter, and I do like that. I've got to figure out the larger operational mechanisms of getting fleets to where you need them to be, and how do you make the task force work the way you want it to. But I think even just trying to evaluate this Midway battle helps to clarify what can be gained from either side in that combat, to want to have that combat at Midway, or near Midway, and determine who's ultimately really going to win that combat, um, from a tactical sense and a strategic sense, and that feels pretty good. So I'm overall uh, happy so far with the way the system works, understanding it's different. I do like the day versus night stuff, and all this is going to come into hyper focus here over the next several videos I'm going to be doing on the channel, which again is the Divine Wind campaign, 1944, and so the Japanese are really on the back foot heavily. But what can they achieve on the back foot when the Americans are showing up with twice the fleets or 3 times as many units as the Japanese? What can the Japanese do with their remaining fleet that is effective? They can't win the war of attrition. They can't win the naval war of attrition. But what else can be achieved? Can they force the Americans into stalemate combats that continue to block the support marker placement? That might be the key thing they can hope for. I'm actually a little bummed because I think 1944 is kind of past the point where these naval battles could be very exciting and like game shifting. Again, imagine that Midway battle where, we might not get the invasion of Midway off with the first support marker, but if you just annihilated the entirety of the American carrier fleet in 1942, and they're at best going to get a couple more over the course of a couple of years or whatever, that trickle until they start coming off the production line, I think that would be a very interesting thing to play out in the 1942 campaign. Kind of makes me reluctantly thinking maybe I should have done a 42 or 43 and played a longer campaign, but I think 1944 is going to be just fine. Anyway, holy crap, video's getting too long, guys. One last thing, I will say, it is in the design notes that the system of combat that we're talking about here isn't like necessarily like bespoke for this system. If you read the design notes, there's some commentary in there about the system being very similar to Victory in the Pacific from Avalon Hill. I've not played that game, so I don't know for sure how similar the systems are. But if you're watching this and you're not super familiar with this game, but you're familiar with Victory in the Pacific, and you're thinking, hey, this is starting to sound pretty similar, that may be why. So there you go. All right, intermission over, folks. When we come back in my video series for Axis Empires, we will begin the Divine Wind campaign. Lots to unpack there, a lot of careful thought I need to keep putting into that, because being a late war scenario, there's a lot of units, there's a lot of things to think about, much more than an earlier campaign, a training scenario campaign, or even a campaign without Schiffskrieg. So, much fun to be had. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, and keep on gaming.